Alright. I don't want to talk about the elephant, but we might as well. Well, this is better covered by its own show. And there, in case you're wondering what we're talking about here, and I guess since we've covered everything else we really have on the list for right now, it's going to sound, assuming I can get it together, we're actually going to do another show on this sometime this week, assuming I can get it together. Some of the people I'm doing shows with are not available next week, so the network's going to largely be shut down next week. One of the people I'd really like in on this conversation is busy dealing with 8 kinds of chaos right now and has a diametrically different schedule to everyone else. So whether or not we're going to be able to get an episode of Tech Babble to look at this, it is anybody's guess at this point. What we're talking about is the ever galvanizing story of Google and Verizon versus net neutrality versus the FCC and everything else. This story is complex. In case
it seem like people think it's complex.
Yeah, no.
The general consensus seems to be
the general consensus here in the public trust is Google is against net neutrality, and I'm like, okay, have you actually gone and read what's being proposed here? It's there. Again, hopefully we get to do an in-depth little group discussion on this with a good group of us, because between all the shows here, we got a good group of people. We could really do an in-depth discussion on this. One of the little yin-yang things here people are getting on is the fact that wireless is quote-unquote excluded from neutrality in this. And that's not exactly the case, although it is the initial proposal. I have mixed feelings on that issue. Very mixed feelings on that. This is the thing that the internet's sniping on. They're like, this is blasphemy because Wi-Fi is the future of internet. 5-10 years from now, we're all going to be on Wi-Fi. Nobody's going to be using wired internet and yada yada and so forth. I don't think it's quite going to happen that quickly, but this particular type of internet is becoming the hallmark, and this is going to be the hallmark for rural areas. It's like this is the technology that will bring high-speed internet to rural America. It's just is what's going to happen. On the one hand, this is a clearly proposed Bill of Rights for wired connections, and even then, some people on the internet aren't happy because they go into saying, okay, legal traffic. And everybody's like, oh, see, they're going to make it federal law. They're going to take our torrents and our P2P and our stuff. They're going to take all this stuff away from us because it's not legal. Okay. Yeah.
Legal uses BitTorrent, and I'm certain somebody would bring that up if they tried.
Well, it's like, I can think of a few legal uses of BitTorrent that would be exceedingly valuable to me, actually. As a content distributor, distributing bandwidth around like that is one of the best ways to distribute the bandwidth. It's like community. Okay, download the torrent and host it 3 times so it's distributed, please. It's like, that's not a crazy idea, and that way it's distributed around, and it's not a single point of failure, and it's a win-win all around. The load on the infrastructure is lighter, the load on the bandwidth bill is lighter, and the reliability of the thing is, in the grand scheme of things, better. That's a perfect legal use for torrents and P2P and other stuff like that.
We digress.
Yeah, we digress. Well, no, that's the thing. The legal issue there that we want to go into in deep side, it's complex, and it has to do with how net neutrality and god-awful DMCA and other things intermingle. Again, that's a whole 15-20 minute conversation in and of itself, which is why we're not going into this depth and hope to do another thing. The other thing people are snapping on like crazy here is the fact that this would bring a new standard for net neutrality to wired connections. So Comcast, AT&T wired, like for your home, so on and so forth, get hurt. I'm not 100% where this falls on cable companies that are also doing wireless, because there are a lot of companies like that where they're a cabled connection provider, but they're trying to Wi-Fi certain towns so that you can take your home internet connection away. Those are here or there. They're not really a nationwide phenomenon, but they are happening. But basically, under this agreement, it would be Wi-Fi is exempt initially to encourage them to build out their infrastructures, with the understanding that they're going to be placed under federal regulation, so that they're not regulated under the same regulation as cabled, but they are under some regulation with annual evaluations of when they get to the point that they need to be under the same regulation, so as not to discourage investment in the networks, but to encourage protection of consumer rights. That's the galvanizing point the internet is diametrically opposed to here. That is the incredibly complex issue that you have to put on your tinfoil hat, you have to take off your tinfoil hat, you have to see it from the cost of actually providing the service, you have to see it from the cost of how companies abuse consumers, you have to see it from the point of view of consumers' best interest. We could easily fill 3 parts of content going into that in depth, which is why I hope we get to do that video. This is a galvanizing issue. There's supposed to be a couple of town hall meetings with the senator that's on the board that deals with this type of stuff. I think this Thursday. I believe it's in Minnesota, I want to say. I'll put a link to the thing. And hopefully we can get that done before Thursday, but it's looking less and less like that's going to happen. Anything to chime in and say on this?
Not much. Just I'm a bit of a Google fanboy, and this has been kind of a jarring thing to me, because a lot of the concerns about the whole wireless exemption do seem founded, and so I've had to do a lot of reading to try and understand what the heck Google is thinking on this, and I'm still not done with that. But
well, what's really interesting here, and there's some devil's advocate and behind the scenes stuff here that I want to go into detail, assuming we get a chance to do that little in-depth discussion. Google is actually lobbying both sides here. Google has lobbyists pushing for this proposal, which is in favor of the Wi-Fi networks, which Google is attempting to partner with right now through Android. And Google is also pushing with other lobbyists that aren't tied to their Wi-Fi lobbyists for providing the same net neutrality on Wi-Fi that they're pushing for in this agreement for cable. Smart on Google's part. Now, some people on the internet are going, well, Google's playing both sides against the middle and sitting on the fence, so no matter where it falls, they look rosy as a peach. I don't necessarily disagree with that argument. However, you could also easily argue that what Google's trying to do here is, the way this is worded, is they're pushing for a situation that in the short run is good for the wireless providers, so that the wireless providers get greedy and build out the infrastructure. Why in the long haul, for the time 5-10 years down the road where Wi-Fi is absolutely key, they're pushing for a back door to slam federal regulation on top of that infrastructure and make it be under the same net neutrality as everything else. This is a very complex issue. I'm not saying, again, I can't do this justice in this thing. It's like this is a whole hour discussion in and of itself with other people.